Welcome everyone. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this vintage looking enamel wash bowl and pitcher with only cardstock, mostly cardstock. I just used some recycled copy paper and a scrap piece of cardstock, and then I used one of the templates that I made in a previous video for the tubs, a pair of scissors, a pencil, some glue. I also used a little bit of string, crochet thread, and paint and water slide decals, which are optional. This is one of my favorite templates from the video that I was talking about the tubs. And I'm tracing it out, but I'm not tracing the whole thing. I only traced half of it, and then I'm going to make one of the pictures out of this one. Then I curl the edges to kind of train it to go into that circular shape. And then I'm just winding it around itself until I'm happy with the shape, how thick or wide I want the picture to be. Once I have the size that I like, I go ahead and make a mark on the edge so that I know how far to overlap it. And then I cut off some of the excess. I leave probably about 1/8 of an inch or so to put the glue on. I would also suggest maybe tracing this and making a pattern and naming it picture in case you plan to make more. But if you're like me and you like to have a different picture each time, then don't worry about the pattern. This time while I'm drawing the pattern out, I'm shortening it some, so I'm drawing a line the same distance away, all the way away from that curve to give me a shorter picture. Here is what the piece looks like after I modified it. That's the original, and then this is what I traced from it. I made a few of them because I couldn't decide which color of a picture I wanted to make for this video, so I'm going to try several. That way I can play around with some of those other fun colors I was thinking about. I'm drawing several 1/8 inch pieces to cut so that I can paper quill them. I cut several because I'm not sure how many I need to glue end to end, because it really depends upon the bottom of the picture, because this is going to form the base of the picture. Probably started off by doing about 4 or 5, and I went ahead and paper quilled them. I didn't worry about making them really tight because they're going to get glued anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I kept checking the size every now and then to see if that was enough where I needed to add more. And if I needed to add more, I just glued on an extra strip and then rolled it up. If you would like to skip this part of the paper quilling, I'm gluing all of the pictures down to a piece of scrap cardstock. You could actually just stop there. You don't need to put the rounded base on. That's just something extra. I've seen them in real life even flat on the bottom, and it might be fun to do a mixture of both. I'm using this quilling mold to help me get the dome shape for the bases. Once that I have the dome shape, then I'm applying glue to the inside and I'm going to let it dry completely. I have big fingers, but I like to use my pinky, and I just smush the glue around in the inside to make sure that all the surfaces are covered. While everything is drying, I'm using another one of my patterns, and I'm going to create the bowl for the set. I did 2 different sizes, one a little bit shorter than the other one, and I basically formed these the same as the pictures. I trained the cardstock, and then I rolled it into the shape of the bowl that I wanted, however wide that was. And then I make my mark and I cut off and leave that 1/8 of an inch area to use for the glue. And then I apply glue to the bottom and glue it down to another piece of scrap cardstock. I also like to put a bead of glue around on the inside of the bowl and then use my pinky again to kind of smush it all the way around and smooth it out. Now that the pictures are dry, I'm going to cut them away from that cardstock. I trim them as closely as I can without cutting into the picture itself. Now it's time to glue the rounded base on if you chose to add one. And I put glue around the edge and glued it to the picture bottom. They should match up pretty good if you made your disc for the paper quilling wide enough. Now that the bowls are dry, I'm trimming them away from the cardstock just as I did the pictures, and I'm trimming up close to the bottom. You can always sand away the extra later. This is optional, but I like to sand the little seam to make it more flush so it's not so bulky there. And then I like to sand the bottom of the base. I start on the side first where it joins the picture, but you can see that I love sanding, so I go crazy with the sanding. You don't have to go that far if you don't want to. Next, I'm going to show you a couple of options that you can make for the spout. I drew a circle and then I kind of offset and drew a circle inside of it and cut it away, and I spray it with a little bit of water and let it sit for a minute, and I'm taking my large ball stylus in my hand and I'm just rubbing it around to kind of train it to want to go into that circular shape. And as the water's drying, it really stiffens it up and helps it hold its shape. Because it's so small, it's really fiddly. And then again, I just like I've shown before with the pitcher and the bowl, I overlap it to the size that I like and I make a mark, and then I just trim away and then glue it. And it should look something like this. You can mess around with the size of the opening and make it larger or smaller, whatever you choose. Here is the second option, and this one's my favorite. I took one of my little patterns, one of my little arch patterns, and I added a little lip to it in the center there. And then this is the same thing. I sprayed it with water and I'm just rolling my ball stylus over it in my hand, and it's causing it to naturally curl up. And then once you're happy with the size, then you can glue it just like how we've done before. And this is how the two options look. This was that first way with the circle. You may even have a different spout in mind. Now I'm going to create the handle. And I use a piece of brown grocery bag, just a little strip of it, and I put glue all over it and fold it over onto itself, and then I draw out some little skinny strips that will become the handle. I like to make the handle with the grocery bag instead of cardstock because you're adding the glue and it's double thickness, it seems a lot thicker to me and it shapes better, and I feel holds its shape better. I glue the top of the handle first upside down like this and let it dry. While it dries, I'm going to add some glue to this crochet thread to stiffen it up and then let it dry. It's easier to work with that way, but that's completely optional and you may be okay without gluing the crochet thread first. I glued some of the thread around the necks of the pictures and also on the top rim of the bowl. Once the glue is dry on the handles, then I start to form it by just gently bending it with my fingers, and I decide if I want the handle to be up higher or down lower, and then I trim it, and then I glue the handle in place. At this point, if you wanted, you could give them a thin coat of glue. I didn't do that with mine. I just started off with a coat of gesso, and then I gave them a coat of ivory paint. I don't seem to have any footage of me painting the handles and the little thread that's going around the neck. I painted it before I did the chalk pastels. And then for the chalk pastels, I just shaved off a little bit of the color that I wanted, and I applied some at the bottom and up near the top, pretty much wherever you would like to put them. For the water decals, I went to Canva and I set up a whole document of really pretty flowers and some words that I liked, and I made them small enough, so I have a bunch on here. And then I just found a group of flowers that I liked and I cut it out with my X-Acto knife. I trimmed pretty close to the design, and in some cases you may even have to cut away some of the leaves to fit on your picture. Once I had my design ready for my picture, I put a little bit of water into my paint pan and I drop in my water slide decal and I gently pushed it down into the water with my tweezers, but really gently. And I leave it in there not even a minute. It's just a few seconds, and you'll kind of see the edges will start to look a little wrinkly. Gently take it out with your tweezers and gently lay it onto whatever you're putting the decal on. Hold it on one side like you see me doing here, and then slide the paper out from under it, but without disturbing the decal. And then blot it with a paper towel to dry all of the water, but just gentle blotting. I really wish that I knew how to paint pretty flowers, but I don't. So this has been very helpful for me. I hope it helps you too if you've always had a problem painting pretty flowers. And here's how it looks sitting in the little bowl. All that's left now is to give them a coat of triple thick to shine them up a little bit. A couple of things I forgot to mention about the water slide decals is that the paper that I bought said to bake it in the oven. I do not bake mine in the oven. When I know it's completely dry, I seal it with the triple thick, and I haven't had a problem. And another thing is, if you make a mistake and your decal is messed up, it peels off really easy and you can just cut another one and start over. Oh, and I almost forgot, the little black dots or spots you see is chipped enamel. I just did it with black paint. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.